Hello and welcome, dear listeners, to episode 204 of The Reformed Gamers, a show all about theology, video games, and dread. I'm your host, Logan, and joining me back again for another Metroid-themed episode is Jonathan Steele. What's up, man? Say hello to the dear listeners from your closet.
Greetings. It is so good to be back. Is the video of this going up? Are they going to be able to see my weird closet setup I have here?
At least on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, everybody. I'm just going to be leaning here in my closet with my wardrobe behind me.
Looks nice.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's good to be back. I love doing these. I love talking about Metroid. I love talking about anything Nintendo, but I'm in a Super Metroid mood these days. And man, I'm excited. Can't wait.
Very fitting for this episode, so I'm glad you have that attitude, because we're going to be talking a lot about Metroid Dread here on this episode of the podcast, dear listeners. As I was saying in the last episode with Aki, I feel like that's all I'm really doing anymore with TRG. TRG has just become the Metroid podcast. We're putting Metroid videos up, putting Metroid podcasts up, just tweeting about Metroid. It's just Metroid 24/7. We need to just change the show to, I don't know, TMG, the Metroid Gamers or something. I don't know. It is what it is. So I do got to point this out, man. There's this. Okay, so dear listeners, if you're listening to this on the audio, go to YouTube and watch this real quick. Do you have a dress behind you? Is that yours, the floral print?
No, I know I said my wardrobe. What's behind me is my wife's wardrobe.
Okay.
I'm looking at my clothes, which you can't see at my side of the closet. So,
gotcha.
If you want to sneak peek at what my wife wears, that's weird.
That is weird.
I said it, and then as soon as I said it, I thought, you know what, that was a weird thing to say.
and the sad thing is, Skinner is probably going to leave this in and then just laugh the entire time that he's editing it.
Hello, kids.
We're a kid-friendly show. Oh man,
we are.
What's really bad is I found this out today, actually. That friend of the show, listener of the show, Pastor Shay, he recommended the podcast to his parents on a newsletter he sends out in his student ministry. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Just be careful, because the last time I brought up Reformed Gamers in front of a group of parents, I couldn't interview at a church anymore because they hated the R word. So just be careful with that. But then he posts an update today and says, so ever since I sent that email out, a group of parents want me to meet with them on a weekly basis to, I saw your face, it's not bad. They want to meet on a weekly basis and go over specific episodes of the show to talk about the games that their kids are playing. And I'm like, that's super cool. And now fast forward to here, and I'm like, here Jonathan is saying, if you want a sneak peek of what my wife wears.
I like to apologize to all the audience members for my weird statement. No, it's just a closet, everybody. It's just outerwear. Everybody calm down.
That's true. It's just a closet. There's nothing to be ashamed of, okay?
Nothing to be ashamed. It's a cedar-lined closet, which was this way when we got this house, which is very cool.
And it's pretty swanky looking, I'm not going to lie.
It looks cool, and it's cedar-lined because that way you don't need mothballs. The cedar does the work for you, and it smells way better than mothballs. Pretty cool. I don't know who did this, but it's a smart idea. Yeah, it wasn't me.
That is smart. Man, TRG, helping you figure out how to line your closets. I guess that's what we do.
Mow your lawns and line your closets. Come on down.
That is a deep cut if I've ever heard one. Oh man, only dear listeners who follow me on Twitter or watch me on Twitch know where that one's from. Golly, I need to bring those back. Those episodes.
Man, you had something there with Reformed Lawn Care. I'm telling you, man,
I did, man. Sowing seeds, mowing weeds. We could have started something.
Yes, sir.
Maybe if we get 50 patrons on Patreon, we'll start a lawn care podcast, and we'll call it the Reformed Lawn Care.
I'd come on to that one. I'm about to buy a blower, and I'm very excited about it. So, in November. So,
right on. Right in time, man. You got to blow all those leaves off your property.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough, man. Well, dear listeners, you just got a sneak peek at pretty much what the pre-shows are like before we start recording the show and what the patrons have been listening to. So if you want to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thereformedgamers, support us low as $1 a month. Get you behind the scenes, early uncut access to all of our episodes. Before we get into the show, a little bit of housekeeping. As always, there's new content going up on the website, the YouTube channel. Follow us on social media, all that jazz. links to everything new and fresh and hot for you. I don't know. You know what? Just we're gonna words are hard. I was thinking of the McDonald's thing. You know, when you get a burger and it says like made hot and fresh and ready for you or something. I was thinking of that, but now it just sounds weird after I've said it. So we're just 2-0 for this episode here. But anyway, dear listeners, all the new content, it's in your show notes. Just go check it out. Enjoy.
We'll just label this one the hot and fresh closet episode. That'll work.
I don't know.
You shouldn't invite me on this show. That was probably a mistake.
I'm gonna have to make this episode explicit because we're kind of approaching that border on Christian podcast content where it's like, okay, this is a little too edgy. This is not safe for Baptist listeners.
I'm gonna behave now. I promise. I'm gonna behave.
Fair enough. All right, y'all. Before we get too off we're already off the rails, but let's just get into the show like we always do. A little bit of what have we been playing, Jonathan? Man, what is a game that you've been getting into recently?
You know, my answers are going to be a little more boring this week, just because my work schedule has been absolutely insane. I've been filming various projects like just nonstop since the last time we recorded, and so it's that, and then between then and now, the vast majority of my gaming has been Dread, which we'll talk about obviously in the main part of the show. But other than that, I've been dabbling. So when November rolls around, for some reason, November-ish, like late October and November, for some reason I get a hankering for like vast open world RPG type games, like Skyrim specifically. So I have been dabbling in a little bit of Skyrim, and I have been dabbling.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, it's kind of like your hibernation game sort of thing. Like, you know, it's hibernation gaming.
There's something about, Skyrim is just like very wintry, and I get in the mood for that. And I'm like, I want to wander around in pine trees and snow. And so I play Skyrim. But actually, even more than that, I've been playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, because I picked that up at the end of last year, and it was fine. It was good. But then other things pulled me in, and I got a little burned out with it and moved on. But now I'm finding myself pulled back into it, and it's kind of junk food gaming a little bit. It's not like the flaws are pretty clear, but I know what to expect. I know what the flaws are. I know what I want out of it, and so I can just jump in, do missions, explore, get some upgrades and skill trees, and the things that you do in Assassin's Creed these days.
all the things.
So it's kind of, like I say, it's kind of junk food, but it's fun. That's most of how I've been spending my time gaming. So
fair enough, man. Now, if you actually, I don't know if we've talked about this, because we talk a lot in our group chat, but have you actually finished Valhalla, or are you you haven't finished it?
No, I got, I think, a decent way into the main story and did a lot of the side stuff, and it just burned me out. I'd say it's better than some of the recent Assassin's Creeds have been, but it's very much still a bloated Ubisoft game in a lot of ways. For all its positives, and it does have many positives, it just the repetition got to me, and I backed away. But now I'm kind of back into it, and it's like, this is actually all right. I'm having a good time. So and it's more polished now than it was last year. So that helps a lot.
That's for sure. There's definitely been a lot more patching going on since then. Big time. I don't know. I've been thinking about that game a lot here recently, and I've been thinking about jumping back into it as well, because I put maybe 20 hours into it. And I think that was when our mutual friend, friend of the show, Derek Smith, he texted us and said he had put like 90 hours into the game or something. Yeah. And that was around when he finished it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to finish this game. Then I'm just going to quit. And so, but I've been thinking a lot about it here recently, and I don't know if that's just because you've been talking about it more recently, or if I've just been seeing it on my dashboard on my PlayStation more, or what. But I don't know. I may jump back into it.
Yeah, it's one of those games where I don't think I would ever go, dude, you've got to play this game, to anybody. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, get it on a sale. It's pretty good. It's a good time. If you know what you're getting into, if you like Assassin's Creed, if you like open world nonsense, it's fine. It's great. It's a good time.
So. Especially if you like taking axes to monks' heads and all that stuff.
many, many, many times over. Yes.
Oh man, dude, I remember when that game came out, and that was a big thing in the Facebook group for a while. It's like, are you killing Christians? It's like, well, not really, because they're Templars, so not
Yeah.
exactly.
It seems to intentionally ride that line pretty close, but ultimately, I don't know. I don't know. This is a whole other side thing, but yeah, at
Yeah,
the end of the day, it didn't bother me.
yeah, and that's the thing. I've always been interested in doing an episode on that game specifically, because we haven't done, at least in the back catalog of TRG, there isn't an episode on an Assassin's Creed game specifically. And I think Valhalla would be a really interesting one to do. It's just I have to play through the game, and I don't know if I can finish it.
Yeah, on that whole thing, I guess the best way I can sum it up is like, for as many times as the game seems to be like, let's burn down churches, it feels like equally as many times there are dialogue moments where the game is trying to say something along the lines of, "Hey, if you're a Christian, that's cool. Like that's fine. Don't worry about it. Like we're cool with that." Like they try to paint it in a positive light as often as they don't. It feels
Yeah,
so. At the end of the day, it's like whatever. I mean, it's just a video game. I don't know.
yeah. It's also historical too. I mean, that
It
stuff
is.
actually
I mean,
happened in
that
that
actually
time.
it actually happened. Yeah. So
So,
yeah.
but anyway, I didn't expect that to get as deep as it did. But hey, dear listeners, if you guys want an episode on Assassin's Creed Valhalla, leave a comment somewhere. Let us know. I would love to know, because then maybe that'll push me to finish the game. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Speaking of finishing games, oh my gosh, I honestly dreaded this section of the recording
I know what this is.
because like let me save the other game. Let me talk about Tales of Arise first and foremost. Started playing that a lot more. I'm about 20, no, yeah, close to 20 hours into the game. Uh, and I am really enjoying Tales of Arise. I am glad the game is as good as it is. I'm glad that the game looks as good as it is. I'm glad the combat is
Awesome.
honestly the best in the series that it's ever been. It's just the way that you can chain your combos together just seems more fluid than what it was in past games. In past games, it felt more clunky and kind of cumbersome, and this one it's fluid and smooth and fast and frenetic, and you can use these cool like combo flashy moves with your other partners in your party. It's all around a really good game. The only real major gripe I have with the game is the fact that the leveling seems a little off, and I tweeted out about this a couple days ago, but the leveling feels a little off to where if I hadn't bought the XP booster, where you get like 10 to 15% more XP after you complete fights, I feel like I would be struggling a little bit with the difficulty, because I still feel under leveled going against enemies that are level 27 to 31 when I'm level 23 across all my members. It feels off somehow. Maybe that's just me going from Final Fantasy IV, where I felt overpowered, and going to this where I feel a little under leveled, and just the difference in that. But I don't know. It feels like it just feels like it's not tuned properly, if that makes sense. Like it's not giving out XP like it should.
Do you feel like it's forcing you to stop the main quest in order to do side stuff so you level up enough for the next main quest? Like it's making you do that? Because that's what I
Not
felt about Horizon Zero Dawn a little bit.
like kind of, because I mean here's how I've been approaching the game. As I've been going through the story, if I come across enemies, I'll go and fight them, even if they're lower level than me. That's just how I
Sure,
am with JRPGs.
sure.
And so I've been able to handle all of the fights that have come my way with reasonable amount of difficulty. I'm also playing on story difficulty, which means it focuses more on story than anything else.
My kind of guy.
So I'm just like, hey, I don't got time to play on hard mode,
Right.
and I need the baby mode. And unless it's Dark Souls, then I don't need it. But I've been playing through it, and there's been maybe two bosses that I can think of that were particularly difficult, but it was manageable, and it felt fine. But I can't help but think, if I didn't have this XP booster, would this be more difficult and challenging than what it is already? And I've had a few people reach out and say, I've been playing on hard mode. I didn't really have any issues. I think there was two moments in the game where I grinded, and that was closer to the end of the game.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, well, that makes more sense, because that's typical for these games. but
Right.
it still just feels weird to me. It's not really. I don't think it's really anything to like steer anyone away from playing the game if you're interested in it. It just to me it just feels weird. To other people, from what I'm seeing, it doesn't feel weird, but it could just
Okay.
be me. So,
Huh. Well,
but
I'm glad you're enjoying it overall.
yeah, me too.
It's always good when they can do another entry in a long running series and it's actually like excellent and not another cash
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, especially after the last two. The last two was Tales of Zestiria and Berseria, and they were just Berseria was better than Zestiria, but Zestiria was a snooze fest and it was awful and I hated it.
Oh, bummer.
But it seemed like Berseria was just not really up to snuff as the past games, and this one feels like it's up there. And the cast of characters is the best it's been in a while too. I love all the characters. The main character I kind of relate to a little bit. He's a bit aloof a lot of times. He's a bit of an ignorant idiot, but he also has a lot of amnesia. So I give him grace there. But I like his mentality of how he sees like evil or whatever stuff going on, and then he looks around at other people not doing anything, and he goes, "Why isn't anyone doing anything about this?"
Mm-hmm.
And he's just that mindset of like he wants to go help when he can, and he's a cool character. I love his just good nature, juxtaposed next to the female main character and how she's just reserved and kind of closed off to people. It's cool to see them interact with each other and kind of play off one another. And then you have the other characters that come in. It's just the cast is awesome. I love it.
Awesome,
So,
dude. That's
yeah,
really
man.
cool. I'm glad you're
It is
enjoying
really cool. Me too. Now to talk about the game I'm not enjoying.
it. Buckle up, everybody. It's about to get crazy. I
Yeah,
know what this is.
and you know about this because I've talked about this enough in our group chat where it's just, oh man. So years and years ago, friend of the show, bringing him up again, Derek, he was talking about playing Skyward Sword and just going over how abysmal some of the end game stuff is. And I'm like, man, I'm kind of don't want to play Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, but the HD thing got announced for Switch and it's coming, so I'm gonna go ahead and try it out anyway. And I picked it up, played it, was like, oh, this ain't too bad. Got 20 hours in, got 23 hours in.
That's right, because you pretty much enjoyed yourself more or less through the meat. I mean, you had your issues, but for the majority,
Yeah.
you had a good time, right? I mean, it was okay.
Yeah. I mean, for the majority, it was okay. Like, I'll admit it was like I was bored. I was like, oh my gosh, this is kind of like a stale experience. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's okay. It is what it is. It's fine. And then I reached 23 hours into the game where I realized I probably have another 10 hours of gameplay left to go, if that at maximum. And it's having me go back to the same areas again a third time and do fetch quests again for a third time and having me fight just enemies that I've fought already for a third time. And I'm just like, I can't do it anymore. I can't do it. This game is literally driving me to the point where I think I need to start seeing my counselor again. It's like it's so bad, and I'm like reading
Yeah.
reviews and stuff online, and people are hailing this as like one of the best or not Metroids, one of the best Legend of Zelda games, and I'm like, what are you people on? No, it's not. It's just. Oh man! And then I wrote I would fully admit it's probably a pretty scathing review on the GG app for it. But I'm just like,
at the height of your emotional pain, you just
yes,
dumped it all on GG.
at the peak of my pain and misery and depression that this game gave me, I wrote a review on the GG app that was pretty bad. And you and Derek both got to see it, that descent into madness through text, as I was just finding things out and just being like, why I'm supposed to fight evil and put an end to it, and you guys are making me go hunt things down so I can go hunt something else down. What are you doing?
You made a good point where it's like some of the characters in this game that hold a lot of the power and I guess have decision making when it comes to what the hero can do. They freely admit and praise you for being a great hero and having proved yourself. And then you ask for the item or whatever you need from them. And they're like, not just any old Joker can come through here. You got to prove. And it's like, well, hold on a minute. Which is it? Like, have I proved myself or not? And it's all Zelda games do that to a degree. But this one really, really leans into it too much.
Yeah, and it was too much, and so I moved the game over to my abandoned list, and as most of you know that follow me on the GG app, when I move a game over to my abandoned list, it's never truly abandoned because literally an hour ago before we recorded this, I popped the game open, got all the stupid tad tones thanks to the YouTuber I watch, Crazy Bear Man 217, whatever his name is.
Oh, you actually did it.
Yeah, I got all of them.
Oh, so you sent the screenshot. I thought you were saying you just watched a video to catch up, and I was like, oh, okay, he's
No,
just
no, no,
watching.
no.
Oh my word, you went and did it. Wow, I'm
Yeah.
impressed.
Took me a whole
Wow.
10 minutes here now, and I was thinking, because I thought I read somewhere it's like close to 70 or something like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever.
Yeah, it does.
No, I did it in like 10 minutes because of this video I watched, and I was like, all right,
nice.
That's not so bad. And now all my items are gone, and I'm like, okay.
Oh, so you did get to that part.
Yeah. So,
yeah, that's fun.
Look, if any of you listening or watching this like Skyward Sword, more power to you. But me personally, this game has just driven me nuts in the final act of the game.
Skyward Sword is a fascinating little game that we could probably talk for way too long about, so I'll be careful here. But it does everything it does, other games do, and they're good games. Like, near the end of the game, taking away all your powers and making you start from scratch and build back up to what you had, and making you revisit areas over again, but the area has changed slightly, and following you down a linear path. And there's just so many things it does that other games do, and yet it manages to do them in the most not mind-numbing, but like, I don't know what the word is. Monotonous, and like make you want to bang your head against your desk kind of a way. Like, just why am I doing? And it just makes it painful. We were just talking about how Zero Mission does that thing where it takes away everything at the end and then you build it back up, and how awesome that was and how well they pulled it off. Skyward Sword is the exact same thing, and it's terrible. And that's so bizarre to me. And I'd love to, I feel like I don't understand games well enough to pick that apart and why that is. But I do know that a large part of it is Fee. The companion in that game, Fee, is like, she will not stop talking to you. Oh, master this, and oh, master that, and like, she won't shut up. I think it's actually toned down in the Switch version.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, in the Switch version, the only time she's ever really talked for me is like when it's a cutscene or kind of a scripted moment. Like, she is rarely popped up to the point where she's annoyed the crap out of me.
Well, you're a lucky man then, because the original game, it was one of those things where you walk up to the door of a temple, like the very first temple, for example, and it's like the door's locked and shut, and there's like a switch up there, and you're like, how am I supposed to hit that switch? And as you start to walk around, it's like 10 seconds, and she pops out and she's like, Master, I detect an 85% probability if you look over in those weeds over there, you might find something you need. And it's like, I wanted to figure that out, dude. This is a Zelda game. And she kept doing that the whole time. It was horrible.
Oh my gosh.
So at least they fixed that.
Yeah, and it's been fine. Like, I still don't really like Fee at all. Yeah. It's like I said in the group text the other night, like, I would much rather have Navi back, which I think speaks volumes. It just, this game. I'm sure I'll finish it by the time this episode actually releases to public feeds. So
oh my gosh.
This is why I shouldn't write reviews when I'm like spiraling down into madness, because I wind up looking like an idiot. This is why I have flip-flops. This is why everybody like chides me within the TRG community about having flip-flops, is because I go back and forth so much. But
you do. It's why we love you.
It is what it is. Yeah. At least I have that. Y'all have that to look forward to. There's consistent things in life: death, taxes, and me wearing flip-flops. So, but let's flip-flop over to the topic here. Before we do, as always, a quick reminder to review the show on your podcast app of choice and all that jazz. Sorry, I'm still thinking about Skyward Sword, and I'm just traumatized by this game. But something I'm not traumatized by. Well, actually, no, a little bit, because the Emmys were terrifying. Let's get into Metroid Dread here on the channel. Metroid Dread is better than Super Metroid. It's a scientifically verified fact with experts and fact checkers. Did I write that?
You did. I was going to say, you wrote that, not me. Were you still in your Skyward Sword fever when you wrote that?
I must have been. It's funny that I added it's a scientifically verified fact with experts and fact checkers.
The only two sources you need, experts and fact checkers.
The only two sources you need. Hey guys, Metroid Dread, and it's better than Super Metroid. It's approved by fact checkers
who were full of beans at the time.
Who were full of beans at the time.
That's a little pre-show joke for all you kids out there.
Oh man. Oh, that's why you got to listen to the pre-show of this podcast. $1 or more on patreon.com/reformgamers. Anyway, let's get into Metroid Dread. After the events of Metroid Fusion, the Galactic Federation receives a video message revealing more X-parasites on the planet ZDR. Enemy robots are sent to investigate the planet, but shortly go offline after arriving on the planet. In order to discover what is going on ZDR, Samus is tasked with a new mission. Upon arrival, Samus is attacked by a mysterious and deadly Chozo warrior. Samus is knocked out during the fight and wakes up alone moments later, which is super weird, but it is now up to Samus to explore ZDR, learn what is going on, and just who is this mysterious assailant. So y'all buckle up, join us as we discuss what may be the best Metroid game to date, Metroid Dread. So I'm sure a lot of people have played this game already. A lot of people are probably familiar with this game. I found out shortly after this game was announced that it was a bit of a meme for the longest time within Metroid circles. And we'll get into the origin story of that here in, right now, actually. So just a little bit of development history about this game. The producer for the game, Yoshio Sakamoto, kind of conceived this idea for Metroid Dread.
Metroid Dread. Actually, that's an accurate name for it.
That's a very accurate name for it. That's what it should have been called, Metroid Dread, because you see the game over screen so often. Mm-hmm. But Yoshio originally conceived of this game as actually a Nintendo DS sequel to Metroid Fusion. It came from a concept of having Samus followed by Dread, so to speak, on an unfamiliar planet. And this game wasn't supposed to be a horror game per se, but Sakamoto did want to explore what he called fear-based gameplay, which you could go so many ways with that. There's so many games that do fear-based gameplay. A lot of horror games are like that.
Like booting up Skyward Sword.
Booting up Skyward Sword, yes. That's a trial in and of itself. Oh man. Now Sakamoto, fun fact, actually attempted to have Dread developed for the DS twice, but the technology was too limited at the time for it to actually go anywhere. The first attempt was made around 2005, and the second attempt was later in 2008. And this is where we actually see a prototype being shown to Nintendo of America at E3 in 2009. And the game wasn't actually even called Metroid Dread at that time. But the prototype didn't even meet Sakamoto's expectations. And so they stopped development again. And so they didn't really do anything with it for the longest time because the hardware was just so limited and they couldn't really do anything about it. So they put it on ice, so to speak, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, wow, I didn't even know they tried to make this that many times. But
how much of an epic game developer do you have to be to come up with an idea and you're like, there's nothing that exists that can handle my idea right now?
Right. Well, it's kind of interesting to think about that because you think of like Hideo Kojima, who has these pretty large off the wall ideas for his games, and yet he somehow manages to make them work on the hardware at the time. Like you think of Metal Gear Solid with the Psycho Mantis fight, it was just kind of years ahead of its time. And how he programmed it to make it seem like Psycho Mantis was reading your mind or knew things about you. It was just really trippy. But yeah, so the game was put on ice, but I mean, a lot of people have seen this all over the internet. In Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, there's a scan message you get from scanning something that says experiment status report update. Metroid Project Dread is nearing the final stages of completion. But what was funny about this is that the director of the game denied any connection with this and just said that it was purely coincidental. It had no connection to it. I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure?
That's weird.
It is weird.
I don't know. Now Nintendo's not afraid to say that projects have been canned as much. 07 though, they were like at the height of like, I feel like that kind of stuff. Where it was super, super secretive. I don't know.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. It's weird. There's been a lot of there's been a lot of skepticism around it. But what was interesting is because of all that drama, they actually changed the wording in the Japanese version of the game to say Dread class turret and not Project Dread. And so,
really, in like the trilogy release,
it just says here, and again, my source is Wikipedia, which is pulling from other things here. So if y'all want to go read this for yourself, you can. But it just says the message was edited in the Japanese version of the game because it launched later in the year, and it gave them time to actually change that.
I see. Okay.
So, but I don't know. I'm tempted to go look at because I have Metroid Prime Trilogy for the Wii. I'm tempted to go look for it.
That to me is an admission by them that it was referencing Dread because they changed it. Like that's
true.
I don't know.
We caught them.
Sounds suspicious.
We caught you, Nintendo. You can't hide things from us over here at TRG. Okay, we're on to you. We know that you're patting Skyward Sword out by sending me the same 3 areas 3 times. I won't get into that. So anyway, going back to kind of more recent times, in 2010, the game was restarted again, or I guess I should say the project was restarted again. And what does he say here? The director said that they're waiting and watching and reading the comments to see what people are interested in before they make any comment on the project. What does it say here? In other interviews, he denied that the Wii game Metroid Other M and the Nintendo 3DS game Samus Returns were connected to Dread. And in May 2010, IGN's Craig Harris said that the story for Metroid Dread was complete and that Nintendo was able to bring it back at any time. So they've been sitting on this story for, 10 years? A little over
time.
11?
Yeah.
A long time. But as y'all know, this game was announced earlier this year at a E3 Direct back in June with a release date of October 8th, 2021. The game is out. We've played it. It's amazing. It's received it's received critical acclaim from many outlets. There's been a few people highlighting kind of the difficulty of the game and just how that is and how that fares, but we'll get into that a little bit later on. But I think a lot of people that are listening to this have already played the game and are super excited to hear us talk about it. I did send a message out over on Twitter asking for just different people's responses to this game. And so, Jonathan, why don't you take this first one here from David Matthews and what he said about the game?
You betcha. I'm going to get right to that and pretend that I had it up the whole time.
I guess I should have told you to have the show notes up the whole time.
No, you're good. I got him right here. So David Matthews says, I haven't beaten it yet, but I'm enjoying it for the most part. The Emmy are a fun challenge. I'm not a fan of all the backtracking. I know that's the point of a Metroidvania, but it's annoying at times. I love the animations of Samus wrecking shop in the bosses.
Definitely. Sorry, go ahead.
The wrecking shop part. Yeah, I got to agree with you there, David. That's one of the highlights of this game. The animation work and cutscenes are top notch. I gotta say, I feel like the backtracking thing is a fair criticism. And you said it. That is kind of like what Metroid's all about in quotes. I don't know. A lot of games do backtracking, like Skyward Sword, for example, and a lot of them do it poorly. And I think there's a way to do backtracking that is correct. And I would argue that Dread does it correctly. And the reason is because if you're going to backtrack and you're scared of putting your players off, what you'll do is you'll handhold. And so you'll guide them and put waypoints or like, hey, head over back to this sector and do, and it's like, well, then I'm just sort of following directions. But in Dread, I would get to a certain point and I'd be like, okay, here we go. Like, I have no idea what to do next. And he's like, he said something about going to this, doing something about this. And it's like, I think that might be over here. And the game actually does guide you. It just does it in a way that is unnoticeable. As an example, there's a point in the game where you're supposed to go and do something. I forget what it is you're supposed to go do, and you don't know where it is. And all of a sudden, all these organisms have popped up all over the map out of nowhere that are indestructible. And you can't kill them until you get a weapon that you acquire later in the game. But they're just kind of randomly everywhere, or at least it feels random. And in reality, they're just funneling you to your next objective so you don't get lost. If those hadn't been there, then you could have wandered halfway across the map and wandered back and never found it. So they they lock off doors and add things and do things in a certain way that funnels you in, but you don't feel funneled, so that when you finally figure out where to go next, you're like, I did that. Even though in reality, and this was more evident on my second playthrough, it's like, okay, it's totally just telling me where to go. It's so subtle that I feel lost, so that when I discover it, it was all me. And that when a game can empower you that way, even if it's manufactured, that's really good game design. And so
Yeah.
I do hear you, but it's like, I think Dread did it better than it. Dread is a good example of how to do it right in my estimation.
Yeah. And especially in comparison to the other Metroid games that I have played, this one definitely has the least amount of backtracking that I think, in comparison to other games, is probably the best. Like you've said, Super Metroid had you backtracking like all over the place. This one, very few moments, at least in my opinion. But I mean, that I think your mileage may vary depending on your play style and if you caught certain things or if you were just kind of like moving around. But we'll get into that here in a little bit. But that was one response, and then the handsome bearded man himself, Adam, writes in and says that he's at the last boss and he's going to finish it tonight, the night of the recording. It's been a really good surprise. He goes, I didn't have a ton of expectations, but it will be words are hard. It will be my first Metroid that I finish. The challenge has been almost perfect, hard, but not impossible. And that's something we'll get into a little bit later on, is the difficulty of this game. But it's something that, I mean, I would agree with that. The game is hard, but it's not impossible. It's almost like, I'm hesitant to say it's like Dark Souls, because I know people get like, they make fun of people when they're like, you're bringing up Dark Souls because it's just hard. But it is kind of similar to that, where, and really, I guess this is just any 2D game that has a difficulty to it, where if you just pay attention to the fights, learn how they move and stuff, and maybe take a break for a day or even just a few hours and come back to it, it's not really that hard. It's just you got to learn the movements of the bosses and the enemies.
It's once again like the backtracking. It's something that, varying difficulty in video games is a tale as old as time. But there is a very, very fine line that's hard to hit, and that very few games hit, where it feels impossible when you first encounter a boss or a challenge. You're like, this is not possible. There's no way. And that's how you genuinely feel. And I think we were texting about it in our group, and one of the ways I think I put it was like, my thought process as I'm playing a given boss is like, I can't do this. There's no way this is possible. I'm about to, you know what? I think I'm done with this game. I did it. And it's like, and you finally do it. And it's like, wow, I figured it out. That was awesome. I thought that was impossible. And then you go to the next thing. You're like, all right, this is the one. There's no way. And then, I did it.
Yeah.
And you keep moving. And it's so, the most recent game I can think of that did that was Celeste. Yeah, I don't know if anyone's played Celeste, but it rode that line flawlessly, where you go into a new area and it's like, I'm supposed to get up there and I can't get up there. That's not, and then you're like, oh, but wait, yes, I can. And then you see how to do it, and then you can't do it still because you can't execute. Then you figure out how to execute and you nail it, and you're like, that was amazing. And that is all of Celeste over and over and over and over. And that's how Metroid Dread feels too. And it's just, very few games hit that, and I feel like they got it. Like, it's so satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me read some two more responses, and then we'll get into our first impressions of the game and kind of share what we thought about the game, because we've been kind of dancing around it here for a little bit. But another response we got from Prof Noctis, it says the traversal movement in Dread is a dream. Boss battles are memorable puzzles, but what I appreciate most is how they took risk plot-wise that may shake up future installments of the series. Just thinking of what Samus's new movesets might include after that revelation, thinking face. I think it just copied it tried to translate the emoji from Twitter over into the Google Doc and just said thinking face.
Thinking face.
And like Ron Burgundy, I read it. So, thinking face.
On the teleprompter.
Another response we got from Blackbeard Gamer. He says, I'm pretty much stuck at the last boss, but boy, oh boy, is this game fun. It really takes me back because there are some parts where you think you're stuck, but all you need to do is blast your way out. And as the ancient Chozo proverb says, when in doubt, bomb it out.
Amen.
Blackbeard Gamer goes on to say, also, the music pretty much sets up the mood and the area you're in. It's perfect. So, Jonathan, man, spoiler-free first impressions of the game, dude. What did you think of Metroid Dread?
I mean, it's so hard to know where to start. It is. It's just a supremely satisfying video game experience from the get-go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, uh, I think in our last episode about Fusion, we talked about like the pillars of game design, and like you've got your gameplay and you got your story and you have your combat and movement and exploration and music, and there's all these elements. And I feel like it nails nearly every one of those. I think the only thing that I felt like was mediocre about this game was the music. Not to
Yeah.
disagree with you there, Blackbeard Gamer, but like it was not bad music. It was just like I didn't feel like it really drew me in. It was moody, but I don't know. But other than that,
It's
like
not. It's definitely not on the same levels as like Super Metroid with like the music from Norfair, where it's like the doom, 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 you know,
the
and all that
melodies
stuff.
just weren't as strong. Even in Prime, I felt like some of the melodies really came through
Yeah,
strongly. But this one, I don't know. But it wasn't actively bad. It was just like, it's okay.
it's
Other
just
than that,
there. Yeah.
yeah, it's just there. Other than that, though, there wasn't anything about any part of this game that I thought, they could have done that better. Like everything you do, down to the minuscule animations that Samus has when she's pressed up against a wall or aiming, or like, you know, everything just felt really good to do. And like, most importantly, you're just shooting constantly. Obviously, that's all you do in this game is just shoot, 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 shoot,
Mm-hmm.
shoot. And it consistently feels good to do. It's like people talk about Destiny 2 that way, where it's like all you do in this game is
Yeah.
just shoot stuff and it feels good every time because the mechanics are so well fleshed out, so polished that it never gets old. That gameplay loop just is satisfying. And Dread hits that, and it hits it like with flying colors.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think everyone knows where I stand on this game because I've been putting out so much content on YouTube about it. I've wrote a review about it already. I've tweeted about it. I've texted so many friends about it. I bought 2 copies of the game. This game, when we did the Metroid Fusion episode, I was like, man, I really hope Metroid Dread is good. Because there's a little part of me that was nervous that it was going to be just not good, or was going to be mediocre. And then from beginning to end, when I finished the game, I was like, this game was like, it was awesome. Again, Metroid fanboy here. I've been begging Nintendo to like give Metroid some attention for years. And so I may be a little biased. So take what I say with a grain of salt. But this game is so insanely good that I was not expecting it to be as good as it is. And the stuff that they do with the story, like Prof Noctis pointed out, where they go with it and the things that they do is both terrifying, awesome, thrilling, infuriating, that it just creates this amazing experience from beginning to end. And it's very much a worthy sequel to Metroid Fusion. I will agree that, I do think that the music is just kind of there for the most part, but I've played through this game twice now on normal and hard, and I'm playing through it again for the YouTube playthrough. And I'm catching so many things now with the background and the atmospheres to where the background environments really build on the atmosphere that if you pay attention to them, man, are they really good set pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Yeah.
think they're as memorable as past games, but they're still worth paying attention to and cool to check out if you just take the time to stop and pay attention. Obviously, not when you're being chased down by an Emmy because you'll get a needle to the neck. But
Wrong time to stop and smell the roses.
yeah. But it's so cool, man. And I'm glad this game is as good as it is. I do think, I mean, I'll admit it is a hard game, but as Adam says, it's not impossible. If you stick with it, you will get the hang of it eventually. It's just, it's kind of like a classic game in that degree. It's going to be hard. It's going to be tough as nails to a degree, but it's all about how you approach it. And I thought the bosses were really cool once you got the hang of them and you learn their moves and you got into this kind of flow state. I mean, it's like old school Mega Man, when you learn your enemy's weaknesses and you're pulling off these moves, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's just getting to that point is a bit of a trial. you know.
Right.
So,
it's incredible that after nearly 20 years, during which Metroidvanias just came out like hot. I mean, just
yeah,
so
there's a lot of them.
we've had so many Metroidvanias, and many of them have been excellent, like Hollow Knight, and to a lesser degree, in my opinion, Axiom Verge. But there's been a lot. And so for Metroid to come back, it had a lot to live up to as far as like this genre has been iterated on a ton. Can you come back and actually do it right? And like, even with all that pressure and everyone expecting this to be the best Metroid game ever and all that, it still blew me away.
Yeah.
So
Same here.
Pretty
Same
awesome.
here. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and throw the spoiler warning out because I want to get into some spoiler talk about this game. So, if you have not played this game or if you have not finished, I'll say this: if you've not played the game or finished the game, this is the point where if you don't want any spoilers, duck out, pause the game, go finish the game, and then come on back. If you don't care about spoilers or you've beaten the game or all that stuff, continue listening. And we'll get into it. I'm sure Skinner's already got the sirens going and telling you to evacuate because of spoilers.
Abort.
But with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it because this is something I want to talk about, and this is kind of where I wanted to really answer the question: is this the best Metroid game? Now I've played all the 2D Metroids, so I can kind of speak from that. But Jonathan, what have you played all the 2D Metroid games? I know you've done Zero Mission, and I know you've done Fusion. Have you done Super Metroid? And I think that was the only other one. No, Samus Returns was the other one.
I played a fair amount of the original, a sum of the original. I have not played 2 on the Game Boy or its remake. Okay. I have played a good chunk of Super Metroid. I haven't beat it, but I think I'm like 3/4 of the way through. Okay. Maybe 2/3. I have beat Fusion multiple times. I have beat Zero Mission multiple times. I beat all 3 Primes multiple times. Is that it? Well, there's the Unspeakables.
Right.
I won't get into those.
We're going to talk about Metroid Prime Pinball.
Oh, I was thinking Other M, which I have also beat, but I regret that. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like it's not worth beating around the bush. Like, I think it's unequivocally the best one. And I said last time that Fusion was unequivocally the best one. So, but that's changed now. I think this beats Fusion. Fusion is excellent, and I think this absolutely outclasses it.
Yeah.
No question in my mind.
Yeah. And I would agree. I will admit that the environments and the music are not as memorable as past games.
Agreed.
Specifically Super Metroid. I feel like a lot of the areas in that, like Norfair, Brinstar, a lot of those get remade, especially in Metroid Prime. You see them again in there. And you see those come back with good reason. And I don't really feel like this game has those areas. You have Dairon, Ferenia, Brr, something. You can't remember the names.
Yeah, you have like the cold one and the hot one and the jungle one and the but it's kind of like, and there's a couple that are like, ooh, that's cool, but by and large I was like, wait, am I in you'd forget because it was like underground maze world with rocks and metal.
Yep. Or the Dallas World Aquarium one or whatever it is.
Which again, admittedly beautiful. It's not that the environments were ugly, they blended. And I think I wonder if part of that's because when you have pixel art, you have to simplify. And because you have to simplify, things have to stick out. And every background is like really vibrant because it's minimal. Whereas the amazing detail and the backgrounds are all gorgeous and super detailed. But I wonder if that makes them blend because of that. They start to lose it like where you are.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head there because you really do have to differentiate when you're using pixel art. And this one, you can just kind of not get lazy about it, but it's just things do tend to blend together when you don't have to differentiate like that. But even with that stuff being a knock against it, what's up, Watson? How are you? How are you, buddy? You want to talk about Metroid Dread? Okay. He didn't play the game. He can't talk about it. But aside from those two things, the story, the way Samus is presented, the way that Samus changes at certain points in the game, the movement, the action, the upgrades, the pacing, the difficulty, I think all make it step up, just stand out from the other games. Fusion was was people railed against Fusion because it was easy and it was linear. This one, you get rid of that stuff and people are still not happy with it. It is what it is. I don't think you can make everyone happy, but at the same time, it doesn't backtrack near as much as like you did in Super Metroid, but
Right.
it has a lot of the storytelling that you saw in Zero Mission. And it has some of the mechanics that were introduced in Samus Returns. It takes everything that was good about all the other 2D Metroid games and distills them down into one game. And I feel like makes it stand out above everything else.
That's a good way of putting it. Kind of like a best of, maybe.
Yeah. And then you take the SAX from Fusion, replicate it in the Emmys, and then it's like, okay, there's an added element. And so it just, I don't know. To me, this is the best Metroid, 2D Metroid. I'll say that, the best 2D Metroid, because I think it excels at everything. And the way that Samus moves in this game, I don't think I know I can go back and play the older games, but I don't really want to play any future games that don't have Samus moving the way she does in this game.
I got a question for you, and maybe this is unfair because we're talking 2D versus 3D, but
okay.
Do you think that Prime 1 still does a better job of atmosphere than Dread?
100%.
I would agree with that too. And I think that's, 100%. Again, I think the 3D gives it a leg up there because you're like in the world, it's all around you. But even still, I just feel like, dude, the mood in that game was just perfection.
Well, and it's even like with that too, we talked about music, right? Metroid Prime had the music to go with it to fit those areas, to really make those areas feel set apart. And the fact that when you consider the game that when it was released and it was put on the GameCube, and yet to a large degree, it still looks insanely good for
it's pretty surprising.
The time that it was released. Yeah. And so, I mean, it does a really good job of setting those atmospheres apart, right, and standing up against it. That's why those areas are memorable. Phendrana Drifts, Magmore Caverns, those areas are dope to remember because they all have a personality, and they have the music to match it, which I can still hear the Phendrana Drift music when you go in.
I was about to say this. I could hear Phendrana Drift as soon as you said it. It started playing. Da, 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 da. It started playing in my head.
It's so good. But yeah, but still though, I mean, that's why I want to separate it between 2D and 3D, because I feel like the 3D games are definitely different than the 2D Metroid games because it's 3D, but also because I think they're going a bit of a different style, I guess. I don't know if that's the right way to say it.
Yeah.
But either way, it's
an
still
unfair comparison a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's still good. So I want to talk about this a little bit, and I don't think we needed to really talk about this too much, but since we both agree that this is the best Metroid game, the conversation that came up around this game, golly, for the first 2 weeks that the game was even out, was whether or not this game was worth full price. In part because
people were asking that question?
Oh, it was all over Twitter, dude, which again, Twitter's a horrible place to be. But
wow,
people were debating if this game was worth full price, partially because people gave stupid reasons like, oh, it's a 2D platformer. It's like, okay, that's a stupid excuse.
That's just just the bored 13-year-olds. We can ignore them.
But to a degree, some people were saying that, well, I beat the game in 6 hours, 7 hours or something like that. And people were using that as an excuse. But when you look at the time clock, it doesn't record your playtime from before. Like if you were to go fight a boss or something and you died, it would reset that time to a specific point and then it wouldn't log it. So you might have gotten a time clock at the end of the game that said 8 hours, but realistically you probably put closer to 10 into it because it wasn't storing all those times when you died and were trying again and again and again and doing all that. And so I don't know. So I guess to you, do you think this game is worth full price?
I do, and I think the time argument is so easily debunked because, and here it is. If time is so important to you as far as how much a game is worth, why would you not, and I would bet you would not be willing to, why wouldn't you be willing to pay $180 for The Witcher 3? Because that game has 300 hours of content or something, even 200, whatever, hundreds of hours of content. but you're like, if it was 70 or $80, you'd be like, what the heck is this? At least when it launched. And so it's like, if 6-hour games need to be $40, then you have to also boost the price of longer games. And then, but then it's like, so there's that, but then it's like, is the time you spend in a game related to its value at all? I would argue no, for many reasons, because Assassin's Creed Odyssey is super long and super bloated with all this stuff, very dry, very boring. I backed out of that game only a couple hours in. I was like, this is just awful. I would much rather play Celeste, which is if you move fairly quickly, like a 4-hour game, maybe a 6-hour game. Dude, 100%. Now, okay, I'm gonna back up because Celeste does cost like $30 or $40 because it was like an indie game. It was very small, pixel art, whatever.
I think Celeste was actually 20.
It might have been, but like, I would rather. There are still other $60 games that are short. I mean, Metroid Dread is one of them. There are many, many other $60 games that are short experiences, but the quality is so much higher. It's like, you could order 3 burgers at McDonald's for, I don't know, $10 or something, or $15, or you could get a tiny little filet mignon at Texas de Brazil and go spend $50 to do that. And it's like, I'll take the filet mignon, thank you. It's not as much food, but like it's way higher in quality. So I don't know. I just think that's a bad argument all around.
Yeah. And I do too, although I feel like I'm trapping myself a little bit because I remember when the Resident Evil 3 remake came out and I beat that game in about 6 hours, if that. And I was like, dude, what? I spent like $60 on this. I beat it in 6 hours. That's so dumb. They cut out areas from the original. But when you go back and look at the original game on PlayStation 1, you could beat that in 7 to 9 hours, depending on, what you did, if you explored and all that jazz. So it wasn't really, like, I look back on that and it doesn't really make much sense, especially since I'm still going back and replaying the Resident Evil 3 remake. I did that last month,
right,
and played through it. And so it's just, and the other thing that I think is just kind of difficult about these conversations is that ultimately it doesn't really matter if Metroid Dread is worth full price or not, because that's going to be subjective to every single person weighing in on the argument at the end of the day. And it's just, I guess it's just what you got out of the game. For me, I'm like, this was a wild ride from beginning to end. I've played the game twice, doing it a third time because I just enjoy playing it that much. So I'm getting well worth. I mean, the collector's edition was $100. And so I feel like I'm getting that value out of the game, especially since that's all I still really want to play. Here we are in November. And so I don't know. I thought the argument was just weird to a degree, especially when video games are actually supposed to be more expensive than what they are currently, because, back in the 90s and early 2000s, those games were $60 to $70 then. They're $60 now, going up to 70 because of next gen. Realistically, they should be probably closer to 100 now. And so
they absolutely should be. With 100%, they should be. Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird to me. Maybe it's just because I'm a Metroid fan or whatever. I just find it weird, but I don't know. It just seemed weird to say that this game isn't worth $60, especially when it seems like a lot of the people saying that it shouldn't be are people who haven't played it, if that makes sense.
And this argument's never going to go away, and it's not unique to the gaming industry. There are other industries where there are products available that are highly quality, and people are like, well, I shouldn't have to pay that for that. And it's like, well, just because you can get it somewhere else for cheaper, it doesn't mean it's better. Like,
right.
There are, like, to come together and to make a game like Dread that is that high in combat quality, exploration, level design, storytelling, graphics, everything. I mean, gameplay arc, polish, all that stuff. That is a rare thing these days, in terms of how many video games come out and how many are that good. It is the upper echelon, the very like the cream of the crop, and an experience that high quality, the time becomes irrelevant completely. because it's like how good was the game? And it's like, again, uh, even barring all that, if it's not worth it to you, then don't buy it. Period. But that doesn't mean you should be like, this game isn't worth this to anyone. It's worth it to me. I would pay more than 60. If Dread was $80, I would absolutely buy it without question, and I wouldn't be mad about it. It's that good.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I would say here, I would agree, but it's like I bought the original, like the standard edition of the game, and then I bought the collector's edition, so I've spent well over $100 on this game already. So I think that just shows what I think about the game.
There you go.
But yeah, as always, dear listeners, you guys can let us know what you think about that particular thing or even the previous topic as well. But let's get into the game itself here. Let's talk about some of the themes, some of the things, and all that stuff. Again, we're in spoiler territory, okay? So I'm going to jump into it. If you're still listening and you don't want it spoiled and you're at this point, I don't want to hear you complaining because I'm going to get into it.
You've had your warnings.
You've had your warnings. So, dude, the last Metroid is no longer in captivity. Because
no,
the last Metroid is Samus.
Dude, Samus is a Metroid. And it's the brilliance of this twist and this arc is that we should have seen it coming.
Mm-hmm.
We have known that Samus has had Metroid DNA in her blood for 19 years. This should have been so obvious, and I did not see it coming. I don't think anybody did. And it was brilliant. It's a perfect way to take the story.
Well, in the way that you see it kind of unfold in the game as Samus continues to grow in power, and you see her slowly kind of, not necessarily, losing control because she goes Super Saiyan by the end of this game.
Right.
That you see that Metroid side of her start taking over as she is getting these tendencies where she's becoming more violent and her hand is glowing purple and stuff, and she just starts grabbing X-Parasite enemies and just sucking the life out of them. It's like, this is intense. Like, this Samus is going places we haven't seen her before. And it's vicious, it's visceral, it is violent, it is intense, much like the Metroids themselves. But man, is it awesome.
Dude. And they do such a good job of making it come across not like she's angry, but like it's primal.
Yeah.
It's a very fine distinction, and they really do a good job with the animations of bringing that across, where she just starts to do it and she's like, I don't know what's going on, but like, and she just starts doing it because she looks at her hand in confusion. The first couple times she does it, she's like, what was that? And man, I should have picked it up too, because the first few times she did it, I was like, what is that? What is she doing? And after the game, I was like, of course she's becoming a Metroid. She's sucking energy out of stuff. But I didn't put it together until the very end.
Yeah. And it's so cool, though, how they carried that from Fusion into this. Because, I remember playing Metroid Fusion and kind of making a joke like, oh, they injected her with Metroid DNA or whatever. She's the last Metroid now. But then you see it at the end of this game and you're like, oh, dude, Samus is terrifying as like going full on Metroid. Because her suit changes and just her entire demeanor changes in the game.
Yeah. Dude, what an awesome suit that is, too. So, do you know what my favorite part about this story arc is, though? I'm not sure we've talked about this yet. My favorite part is it is now accurate to refer to the hero of this franchise as Metroid.
Well, finally. That's the thing. I couldn't read this one response we got from Duncan Fisher that says 10 out of 10 game finally made Metroid the main character.
Oh, I didn't even see that. Okay, you called it out. Well done, Duncan. You beat me to it. That's awesome.
Now when you look at Samus and call her Metroid, it's like,
you can't. Sorry, t-shirt sales. We can't. It's not accurate anymore.
Oh man, it's so good though. But and that's the thing too. That's where the story goes, man. Because this game, I mean, typically 2D Metroid games have been. There's been some semblance of a story there, but it's always been kind of like bare minimum to a degree or surface level as well. It goes a little bit deeper, at least in Zero Mission. And then Fusion, it dives into it more because you have more dialogue going on and things happening and you hear what Samus is thinking. Super Metroid, not so much. You just have that bit at the beginning and then you have that stuff, kind of going on towards the end. But this game, I feel like, really fleshes the world out now. You have two different Chozo tribes. You have the Thoha, whatever they are, and then the other one who's... What's the second one called? What is it?
Mawkin.
Mawkin. Okay.
Mawkin. So Mawkins are the warriors, Thoha are the scientists.
Right. Sorry, all I'm thinking of now is give the man a glass of malt, Josh.
Mawk. Oh, that's a throwback, man.
Yep. Oh, good times. And so you have them coming into play, and you meet Ravenbeak at the beginning of the game, who attacks you, and he's the leader of the, all I can think of now is Malk, of the Malk tribe, and
henceforth.
But you see that Ravenbeak is trying to create an army to really go out and conquer the galaxy. That's why he kept the X parasites around, because he was trying to control them, but he couldn't. And then there's the Metroids, who are extinct. But then Samus shows up and he's like, "Nah, I can just use her. I'll just find a way to get her under my power or clone her or something." And it goes that route, and you learn about the stuff as Samus. You learn kind of the differences between the two, and their differences, and why they're kind of at war, and what Ravenbeak's problem is, so to speak. And he just has a lust for power. And it's interesting at how, to me, Ravenbeak, to a degree, is the typical stereotypical villain, yet at the same time, he's no different than the X parasites and the Metroids, in that he just has a hunger and he just wants to destroy. He just has a metal suit.
Yep, he just wants power.
And so, I don't know, man. When you were playing this game and you were seeing the story played out, what were some things that kind of stood out to you and just kind of made you just stop and go, "Whoa, wait, what?"
The funny thing is, I feel like for all the storytelling genius this game has, the one mistake it makes is it kind of like it has great environmental storytelling. It really does, but it really kind of waits to give you a lot of real juicy story details. And then all of a sudden, there's a point about halfway through the game where there's this absolutely massive exposition dump of information. And you're like, whoa, okay, here's everything. And then from then on, it's pretty regular throughout the rest of the game. So that was kind of a weird pacing thing, but definitely that moment when you meet Quiet Robe and he's like, I had that moment of like, oh my word, like the second Chozo. Now there's two Chozo in this game. Like, this is so cool. They've been this long lost tribe and now they're here. I just love that realization of like, oh my word, we finally have a Metroid game with Chozo in it. Like, this is so awesome. But I think I don't know, as far as an individual moment, the end was definitely the highlight, obviously. But I think my favorite like shout at the TV, other than the end, my favorite like shout at the TV, like yes, like, you know, this is awesome, was when the X parasites get discovered.
Yeah.
And you walk in and you kill that guy and an X parasite pops out and it's like, oh, we're back. And the nostalgia from that was so strong. I was elated when I came across the X parasites finally. Such a cool moment.
Well, especially when like you start leaving that facility that they're housed in and you see them all just flying out, and you're just like, there's almost this sense of dread, you know, so to speak, that comes out, and you're just like, now what? Now how is this game going to be? What's going to happen now? Like, what are these enemies going to be? Is Ridley going to come back? Because, you know, we saw that X take copy him in Fusion.
Right.
I don't think we're going to see anything of that, but who knows? You know, Nintendo could do whatever they want with it. But it just, the way that they change up the game too at that point is where, you know, the enemies start getting a little more, they either change or they get more violent or more intense, especially with the Chozo warriors you come across and their agility and movesets. It's nuts, and it really kind of scales the game up another level of difficulty.
Or like when they combine and form hybrids of two different enemies.
Yeah, you know, but even with that, it's like, it's interesting at how, you know, one of the things that makes Hollow Knight so good is that as you play through the game and you get better in the game, like, you have your character that gets better, right? You get new upgrades, charms, all that stuff. But really, it's you that's getting better in the game. Yes. And as you get better, your character gets better. And in the same way in Metroid Dread, as Samus gets these upgrades and you're fighting these enemies, sure, Samus is getting better, but really you're getting better as a player. And the way that they empower you to that degree, by the end of this game, you really feel like a monster. and
100%.
that all comes to a head at the final boss, which is arguably one of the hardest boss fights I've seen in gaming in a while. But it's cool at how it's structured that way. But you did bring up pacing is a little off. Would you say that the pacing is kind of weird in this game, especially in regards to the upgrades? Because, we're used to getting the morph ball, the bomb, all that stuff pretty early on. And this one, you get it like hour and a half, 2 hours into the game, if not a little bit longer.
So I think the story pacing is a little weird at first, and I think it levels out just fine. And it's not bad, but it was odd. But no. The upgrade pacing I actually think is brilliant, especially if you're a fan of the series. Now, if you're not a fan of the series, you don't really know. You're just kind of like you're in it and getting one thing after another. And you do get upgrades at a pretty good clip. I mean, you're getting one after another. But it's like the developers knew that we expected the morph ball right off the bat, because most Metroid games give you the morph ball right off the bat if you don't start with it even. And so they were like, let's make them wait. And that, dude, they make you go to so many places where you're dying for that morph ball, where you're like, I want to get through that crack. I want to go through this thing, and I can't because I don't have the morph ball. And you keep thinking the next one's going to be the morph ball, and they just string you along. And I personally think it's brilliant, because I think it's a very knowing nod to fans and saying, we're going to change it up on you. We're going to make you figure this out without a morph ball for a little while, and then we'll give it to you. I loved it.
Yeah. And I actually did too. I like how it changed things up for me. It was cool to be playing the game, especially my first playthrough, a handful of hours in. I'm like, where is the morph ball? Where are the morph ball bombs? What is going on? Well, at the same time, I was like, dude, this is so cool that once you get the morph ball, you can just jump in the morph ball form instead of getting an upgrade that made you do it. I was like, that's cool that they gave you that. And then I liked that they even streamlined the wall jumping mechanic. Now you can just jump at a wall, let go of the control stick, press jump when you hit the wall and you're bouncing off the walls and all that. And it was cool. They streamlined a lot of things, and I think they just did a really good job with all of that. And I don't know. I thought the pacing was pretty good. I even liked how the story was paced out, and how, when really you meet Quiet Robe, that's kind of when the game just kicks it into, overdrive. And then it's just like the story just keeps ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, that it's just like, dude, this game is not giving me a moment to breathe. It feels like,
Yeah.
But
There's one thing I want to touch on story-wise, just real quick, that I thought was really brilliant and I appreciated. There's a storytelling device that's used often where you set the rules of the story, and then you let it progress out, and then you introduce a character or a scenario that breaks those rules and surprises the reader or the watcher or whatever. And there's a twist, and it's like, oh, I didn't see that coming. But there's like another, in my opinion, better version of that device that turns it on its head. And that device is very frequently used by my personal favorite author, who you introduced me to, Brandon Sanderson, where he sets up all the rules and then at the very beginning introduces a character who breaks those rules, and you don't know it yet. Then you get to the end and you realize that they've been breaking the rules the whole time and you had no idea. And then all the revelation comes and you're like, whoa, the whole time, it's like, this is crazy. Metroid Dread does that with Adam, where he's like, here we are, it's Adam's back, this is great, we're at the planet, all right, talk to him when you get down there. And then from the beginning, it's not Adam anymore, and you think that it is. And then you realize the whole time you've been lied to. And it's just like, I love that they set that up and then broke it immediately. It's just such a clever, I feel like that just tells me that they really thought this through, and didn't just do simple twists at the end, but really had clever early plants to lead you along.
Yeah. And that was the cool thing too, is that, especially after having played Metroid Fusion so recently and then going into Metroid Dread, you notice, if at least you're paying attention to the dialogue, when you go down there, Adam is saying, once you get down there, there's going to be no communications, find a hard line, and then we'll be able to communicate. But if you've played Metroid Fusion, you know that Adam is the personality or AI of her former commanding officer, Adam Malkovich, who always called her lady.
Right.
Before he ends a debriefing, he always says, any objections, lady? The moment you land on ZDR and you get knocked out by Ravenbeak, he never calls you that. And that right there is your first clue that this isn't Adam. The second clue is his overall depressing and oppressive tone of you're powerless, just give up, you don't need to do anything, just, surrender. It's like Adam wouldn't say that kind of crap. He'd be telling her to keep going. He'd be telling her,
Right.
Go do this. You've got this. You're the only one who can do this. But at the end, that reveal of where he's kind of taunting her or whatever, and maybe not really taunting her, but just like going on in that same tribe. And Samus is like, I've had enough. And she charges her beam, shoots at him, and then it reveals Ravenbeak's throne room. And you're like, wait, what? And then you get another sucker punch in Ravenbeak calling Samus his daughter, because part of his DNA got put into Samus, because when the Chozo were raising Samus and giving her Chozo DNA so she could use their equipment in the suit, Ravenbeak's DNA is in her now. And it's just like, wait, what? You're fighting one of the Chozo whose DNA is in her. But then you keep going after you finish the fight, which is super dope, by the way. All the videos and the cutscenes. But then you have this moment where it seems like Ravenbeak's won, and he's just like asleep or whatever. And then Samus wakes up, her eyes are all huge. She takes her glove, which is changed now. It's got spikes on it. She rams it into Ravenbeak's eye. She's sucking the energy out of the entire ship and Ravenbeak.
So it's good. Just, and she's like screaming the whole time.
Yes,
it's more of a roar, I guess.
Yeah, it's just it's so good, man. It's so good.
Well, I'm sorry. Continue.
No, go ahead. I was going to gush some more. Just how dope this. Like, seriously, we don't need Doom Guy. We don't need Master Chief on the Nintendo side of things. We have Samus, who is that at this point.
She has never been more like a daunting, threatening figure than she is in this game, but in a good way. I feel like it fits. They make it fit well. But what you were talking about as far as that, I feel like that's that whole trope of not trope, but that whole storytelling device of breaking the rule as soon as you set it and surprising your readers. It's even more difficult to drop breadcrumbs and almost give the answer away at the beginning, and in such a way that the reader or viewer doesn't get it. And they totally did that, like you said, where he doesn't call her lady, and there's all these hints that are dropped. But then there's something I think you pointed out to me a while ago, where you're like, the way you beat Ravenbeak at the end is given away in the beginning. At the very first encounter, Samus he has that shield around him. She counters his melee attack. The shield goes off, and she cracks him in the eye with a missile. It's like, that's how you beat the first phase. It was given away and in plain sight. And that's just such a cool, I don't know. That's just such a brilliant way to tell a story.
Yeah, it's smart design. And that's what I've loved about games like this, is how they teach you those mechanics through the game itself. They don't give you a menu. They don't give you a tutorial. They straight up show you in the game, and you're like, wait a minute. Because when I was playing it, I was like, wait a minute, Samus deflected his charge attack at the beginning of the game. Do I do that here? And then I did it, and then his shield went down. I'm like, oh, dude, they were telling me how to beat him at the beginning of the game.
Yep.
And it's ironic when you think about it, because Adam this entire time is telling you, you're not powerful enough. You can't do this, blah, blah, blah. When really, you were probably capable of taking him down this entire time.
And he knew it too.
Dude, this game's so stinking dope. I love this game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, so I mean, we are running out of time.
Oh wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it's
and I don't really fast. There's so many things we could go over still, but one of the things I do want to talk about, though, is kind of at the end, where you get on your ship, you're full on Super Saiyan Metroid at that time, and you're about to touch the ship to take off because the planet's going to explode, as Samus does when she goes to planets. She blows them up at the end. And you're told to stop, because if you do, you're going to suck the energy out of the ship and you won't be able to leave.
Mm-hmm.
But then you turn around and there's, Quiet Robex, or whatever you want to call them. And he bows to Samus. Broha.
I don't know where that came from. It just happened.
I love it. He bows to Samus, turns back into an X, goes into Samus. She goes back into her normal state, and then takes off. What the heck? What happened?
So I at first thought that it was the X Parasite that balanced it out, because the X Parasites and Metroids are more or less opposites. I mean, not opposites. Metroids are their predators, but I thought there was kind of a balance of power there. In reality, though, I think what it was, and I've stolen a little bit of this from, like, reading up online and stuff. In reality, I think it was, so the X Parasite is the predominant life force in that moment. It is an X Parasite in the shape of Quiet Robe, the Thoha Chozo. However, the Thoha Chozo DNA is still very much there, and intact. And the Thoha was the race of Chozo that created the Metroids in the first place to eradicate the X Parasite way back in the day. And so they have the most control over Metroids. Whereas they were also trained to kill Mawkin after the Mawkin rebelled. And so Mawkin encountering Mawkin makes the Metroid DNA flare up and go into, I guess, combat mode, really, which is what happened. That's what Ravenbeak's whole intent was. I'm going to make Samus go up against my warriors and other enemies again and again and again, and get that Metroid DNA to flare up inside of her so she's at max power when I clone her. And he almost did it too. But then conversely, Quiet Robe realized that with the Thoha control, he could balance it back out again. And so he apparently had enough mental fortitude left, even as an X-Parasite, because again, X-Parasites don't just copy physical attributes. They also copy knowledge and mental state. And so he apparently still had enough mental discipline to will his way back into Samus and really rebalance her with the Thoha DNA.
Yeah.
It's really brilliantly told, I would say.
Yeah. And it's, I don't know, it's cool when you say it, because it makes you wonder, like, where's this going to go from here?
Dude, I know.
Are we going to have a 2D Metroid game in the future where Samus is going to have to balance this out, or is she going to have like a rage meter or something like that where she goes into this state,
an aggro meter?
Yeah, like an aggro meter or something. It'll be like God of War, but with Samus, that'll be the next step. She became Doom Guy and Master Chief in this game. She's going to become Kratos on the next one. I don't know, but it's really cool. The stuff that they do in this game and the way that they take the lore that has been established in this game and expand on it and do some interesting things with it is really, really good. And I think that's part of what makes this game one of the best, if not the best, 2D Metroid games in the series, is because of how they take the lore and use it for the story, and just even add some gameplay elements, making Samus become a Metroid at the end and just becoming a boss. It's really, really cool. But as always with these, with TRG, we do try to bring some kind of theology into this, and I don't really, apart from what we said in our Metroid Fusion episodes, a lot of that stuff still applies here. But I think it's more just, it's just more about how Samus is still becoming more of who she is, but dabbling with this kind of hidden darkness, so to speak, that's being brought out by this tempter. But at the end of the day, you have Quiet Robe balancing things out. And I think we as Christians can resonate with that quite a bit and understand that to a degree as well. And so it's cool to see played out. If you push through the difficulty and you make it through to the end and you experience it all, you can experience that yourself. But man, as we kind of start closing this out, dude, man, any closing thoughts about Metroid Dread?
Man, I don't know. I've been thinking about where they could take it next, and I don't know. I think their biggest challenge is going to be like Samus losing all her powers again, and then you go after them again. I don't know how they're going to, if they could just do it again, maybe like a Mario thing where it's just endlessly Bowser and Peach, but I don't know. But as far as about Dread itself, I don't know. I would say if you love Metroid or Metroidvanias, it's a no-brainer for you. And if you do, you've probably already played it by now. But if not, I would recommend it. It's tough. but it's not impossible. And so you're going to have to grit your teeth and kind of like try again and again and again. Like some of those, it's one of those types of games that kind of demands that of you. But if you do it, it's one of the more rewarding video game experiences that you can have right now, in my opinion. There's a lot of games where you just kind of like, okay, I talked in the beginning where I'm playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and I know what I'm getting with that game, but like the combat is absolutely mindless. You get a few special abilities early on and you can just blow through guys and it's not even a challenge. You can just, stealth doesn't matter. You walk into an area, there's literally 20 guys and you can just blow them all, just wipe them all out and move on. And it's totally brainless. And it's not a deeply satisfying gaming experience. It's just gaming junk food. Dread is a very satisfying experience, from solving exploration puzzles to combat to everything. It's just like, if you want a rich gaming experience, it can be found here for sure. It's well worth its weight in gold.
Yeah, man. Definitely. I would agree with all that. And I think that's a good place to end it. And I think it's a good, I don't know, a nice little footnote, so to speak, or a little ending to this conversation on what we've had about Metroid Dread. Dear listeners, as always, if you want to talk more about the game or an aspect that maybe we didn't get to discuss, feel free to leave a comment or hit us up on social media. Before we let you go, as always, Recos, Jonathan, what's something our dear listeners should be checking out?
So, a couple things this week. I feel like every time I come on now, I like to recommend at least one board game, because I've really gotten into them and I've appreciated the way that they can bring both my family and my friends together in a way that is super engaging, facilitates conversation, and doesn't involve a screen, which I'm here on a video game podcast. I have nothing against screens. Sometimes, though, it's good to shut those off and do something tactile and real. Go outside for a walk. What board games I found are a great way to do that. But so there's a little board game. I talk about bringing people together. This particular one this week I'm talking about is called Under Falling Skies. And the best way I can sum it up is it is, oh my gosh, I'm blanking. What's the old school aliens coming down and you're shooting up at them?
Oh,
I
Space
can't think of the
Invaders.
word. Space Invaders. I could not think of the name. Thank you. Space Invaders. I promise I know what video games are, guys. It's Space Invaders, the board game, and it I don't, that may sound weird. It works incredibly well, and it's solo only. It's only a one player experience. You set it up,
Okay.
and you move these ships down every turn, and you have this like underground base on your end, and you're rolling dice and you're rearranging them in a way to combat these ships and either take them out or do something with them that makes them fly back up to their mothership and come back down again. The mothership is like slowly descending towards you each turn, and there's this like research track that you're trying to get up to win the game. It's quick to set up. You can have the whole game up on the table and ready to go in like 5 minutes. So it's not like this tedious, long, like multiple pieces and all. It's really simple. It's small. It's a fast setup, and the decision making. You can you can also play through a game in about 20 minutes. It's very short. And the decision making process is very rich. There's a lot of really good deep decision making. There's a lot of tenseness as you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm gonna have to take that ship and let it hit my base so that I can do this to make sure I fend off that. And it's really good. So if you're looking for a unique solo board game, it's also got beautiful art. Under Falling Skies. And the second one is a mobile game, which I rarely recommend mobile games, but I love finding gems, really high quality gems. And I would call this one a gem. It's called Total Party Kill. And it's a simple pixel art game. And it's kind of its thing is it's just a series of levels, like puzzles, and it's all one screen puzzles. So there's no scrolling. It's all one screen at a time. And you play as a mage, a knight, and an archer. And one of you has to make it to the door at the other side of the room. And there's all kinds of locks and mechanisms and things to figure out. But along the way, one of you has to die at least. Sometimes two of you. So like let's say one of you wants to get to the end. Let's say the archer wants to get to the end. The mage and the knight have to sacrifice themselves in clever, puzzly kind of ways for you to do that. But you have to figure out which one is the right one to sacrifice so that you have the remaining characters with the correct abilities to get through to the end of the door, to the door on the other side. And every level is a new challenge, and it's really clever. It's actually really hard. If you're a puzzle game person, it's very challenging and it will make you think. but I did beat it, and I think it's like 40 levels, maybe, which doesn't sound like a lot, but they're very difficult, and it's free. So get it for free. It's got ads. You can do away with the ads for like $4 if you want to, but you can download it and try it for free on Android or iOS. Total party kill. I recommend it.
Right on. I was actually looking at both of those while you were talking about it, and I at least added Falling Skies to my wish list on Amazon. Total party kill. I'll look up on my iPad here after we finish recording, because that sounds pretty interesting. And
it's a fascinating concept. Yeah.
It's definitely something I think I could see me pulling that up like during my conference period at school and playing that for a few maps and just kind of using that to kind of de-stress from all my crazy kids in my classes.
Totally.
Cool. Very cool. Well, as far as my recos go, as always, continue to be praying for my wife and I's adoption as we continue in this process. If you guys want to support through prayer, would greatly appreciate it. If you guys want to support financially, there's ways you can do that. Just feel free to message me on the different social media platforms that we're on. And as always, check out the Metroid Dread content on YouTube, because there's a lot of it. So if you are, trying to be responsible with your backlogs and you're not trying to buy any new games, but you still want to see Metroid Dread, there's a playthrough going up on the website. There's my backlog update where I'm updating how my backlog progress went in October. Spoiler alert, it didn't go very well because all I did was play Metroid Dread all month. And it's all on there. And now we have this episode on the game. So it's just this, like I said, this is the Metroid podcast is all this is really becoming.
For what it's worth, I have been enjoying your Metroid content as of late. So,
well, thank you.
It. I've been enjoying it.
I appreciate that. I will say this: there's one thing I do especially want to highlight. If you're trying to 100% the game and you don't understand how the Shine Spark challenges work, I did post a video up there that goes through the fundamentals of wall jumping, how to use speed boost, how to Shine Spark properly, and shows you how to do 2 of the particularly more tricky Shine Spark challenges within the video. At the time of this recording, it has close to 350 views, and I'm like, good, I'm glad it's helping people because that's why I put it out. So
they're tricky.
There's nothing else you watch. Yeah, there's nothing else you watch on the channel. Go check that out and definitely go for 100% because it's just really fun to do that in these games. If not anything else, it just makes you feel dope for just completing some of these things because they're definitely one of the harder challenges in the game, but they're a lot of fun to pull off.
Super satisfying. Yeah.
100%. Definitely. Well, Jonathan, man, we've made it to the end, dude. Thank you again for joining me on another episode of the Reformed Gamers and talking about this game here specifically. I wasn't kidding in the group chat when I said I need to get you and Derek on so we can all talk about Skyward Sword together. So
and just trash it for an hour.
Maybe not trash it for an hour. I have some positive things to say about it.
I do too.
But no, it'll definitely be trashing it for an hour.
Yeah. No, we need to do that, man. Just like the old days, the very, very old days. That'd be a blast.
That's a bit of a throwback for a lot of people who, maybe haven't been following me since my first podcast days. Me, Jonathan, Derek used to do a show called the 8-Bit Heroes podcast, and man, that's a throwback. So
it was a show.
It was a show, that's for sure.
It was fun while it lasted, I'll say.
We might revive it for 1 year only here soon enough. But
you never know.
Not 1 year only. I guess it'd be one night only would be the
one episode only.
You get the idea,
yeah.
But yeah, anyway, well, dear listeners, as always, if you like what we do here at TRG, you can support us over on patreon.com/thereformedgamers. Support as low as $1 a month goes a long way in supporting us. As always, it gets you early uncut access to all of our episodes, including this one, and behind the scenes content and more. But if you can't support us through there, totally understand. You can do so on our merch shop. You can follow us on the different social media platforms that we're on. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow the website, follow us on Twitter, like the Facebook page, join the Facebook group, join the Discord, follow us on Instagram. Links to literally every way that you can contact us or connect with us is in your show notes. Unfortunately, we don't do carrier pigeons anymore. But
we stopped that one last month.
It's just, it got a little too crazy, got a little too rowdy. Had to maintain them all. And it just is what it is. There's poop everywhere. I don't know.
I was thinking it.
This is the show where we just say things. We're like, this sounds funny. And then we say, we're like, that was a really bad idea. Why did we?
Anyway. Like how when you were talking about our merch store, I was going to be like, if it's for a sneak peek at our merch store right behind me here, you can see all of our lovely options. You don't know it, but all these have a TRG logo stamped on the front of them. So come on down.
Come on down. You can just browse the whole inventory in Jonathan's wooden closet.
It's the best.
Oh man, dude, this is gonna be an awesome one. If y'all are listening to this and you're not watching it, you need to go over to the YouTube channel and check out a few of these parts because it's funny. It's well worth it. All that to say, thank you for listening to this episode of the Reformed Gamers. As always, be a deer, keep it locked here, and we'll see you in the next episode.